I think it's important for founders, if at all possible, to talk to third parties. It's easy to think you know it. Hey, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm going to set up a LinkedIn automation. I'm going to say this and go. And the next thing you know, you've just spammed a bunch of people and accomplished nothing.
That spark of innovation, it's just waiting for the perfect combination of tools and talent to bring it to life. Welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale. I'm your host, Chris Fanchi, a recovering startup founder, veteran SaaS marketer, turned dev tech enthusiast and growth specialist. Each episode, we connect with the builders, the visionaries, and the problem solvers who are redefining what's possible with today's technology and pioneering the websites, apps, and software products of tomorrow. These are the conversations that transform how we build, how we sell, and how we scale technology businesses in a world where the tech evolves by the minute. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? This is Pitch, Build, Scale.
Hello and welcome to today's episode. We have a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Big North Marketing and specialize in helping dev shops and SaaS companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your SaaS or dev business to the next level, make sure you just stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. We're really excited to have today's guest, Daren Lauda, CEO at Outset. Daren's building a predictive analytics platform that helps SaaS companies forecast long-range bookings and allocate sales and marketing resources intelligently. With decades of experience in go-to-market, operations, and executive leadership, he brings hard-earned wisdom and sharp insight into what it really takes to build a durable revenue. Daren, welcome to the show.
Chris, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So I always like to start with this. Let's go back to the beginning. What first got you into technology?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to go back a little further. My father was a university dean. So in high school, the best way to rebel against a dean was to get poor grades. So right out of high school, I joined the Army. And when I got out of the Army, I did want to get into tech. My father also bought me a computer and taught me programming when I was a kid. I actually had some time on a computer in the Army, even though I was in the infantry, which is kind of odd way back when. So I wanted to get into tech, and I thought I wanted to get into sales. And I started looking around, trying to find the right role, and finally found a little software company based here in Southern California that would actually hire me as a receptionist because I didn't have a degree yet. So I broke in as a receptionist in a small software company, and that was kind of the start of my evolution.
You've had big roles as well at Salesforce, Danaher, Fortiv. You've seen a lot of different growth models. What led you to start Outset?
Yeah, it really goes back to a period of time when I worked at a company called Maven Link. We were on a growth tear. I was there up to about $25 million in ARR. Maven Link would eventually get through $100 million to have a very nice liquidity event. Along that run, getting to $25 million, we realized we were spending sales and marketing dollars really inefficiently. And one of the big problems was, number one, we were trying to grow like crazy. Number two, we had an idea of what we should do, but we couldn't accurately predict the return. More importantly, the when of the return. So if I spend on this campaign today, when will I get dollars back by month? That problem we're always trying to solve. And as a CRO, it's something I always wanted to know. And that's kind of why eventually I started building Outset.
So have you always been interested in entrepreneurship, or is this something that came along later in life?
It's a bit of both. I've always been interested in it. I'm just finally executing on it. I had really great roles at Salesforce.com and PTC and inside the Fortiv world, big jobs. I managed $100 million P&L, and I was making good money, and I felt very safe in that. But somewhere along the line, I wanted to start building my own thing. I wanted to do it from scratch. I wanted to be pre-revenue and go. And so finally, a little bit later in my career, I'm making the full leap into entrepreneurial pursuits.
So what was the moment when you realized that Outset had the potential to be a successful startup, to be an actual successful business?
Yeah, really great question. As an entrepreneur, I'm always worried that I'm not doing enough and I'm not doing it fast enough. Things are going well, but I always worry that I'm behind. But I think the first moments were when people started saying, I don't believe it will do what you say it can. And they started to see it and said, wait, it will. That was really nice to see it from the customers. Then we got validation from a major public university here in the state of California. Then we had a third party called RSM. They're about a $3 to $4 billion tax compliance and accountancy firm. They had their data scientists look at our product and said, holy cow, their math is awesome. It's interpretable. And we want to work with them. And they became a partner for us. So I think when those three things came together, it was the partner in RSM, it was the university validation, and then customers saying, holy cow, it works. Those were fun moments and got me really excited.
So how did you go about finding those early clients or early trial users for the platform?
We focused really heavily on what I refer to as a near bound motion. Near bound is not my original term, but it's the idea of really working through referrals and people who are one step removed. So, in the context of UC Irvine, we actually applied for and got space in an incubator area they call the Cove. So, we're actually working on campus. We met people that way. In the case of RSM, we had people in our network who knew executives in their network. And so that facilitated the introduction. So it's this kind of near bound referral motions that have worked the best for these big events and quite frankly for all of our early customers.
So are you bootstrapping this thing or are you trying to look for investment? What is your approach to growing the business
Yeah,
financially?
right now it's kind of a quasi bootstrap, which is a funny way to put it. So I invested in a venture studio called BLDG. I'm a personal investor in BLDG. BLDG is a company creation studio. So BLDG does not go out and find companies to invest in. It ideates and launches the company. We decided to launch Outset as the first company out of the studio. So I do use some studio resources. I do take some backing from the studio. But at this point, we're trying to stand alone on our own 2 feet and kind of separate from the studio in a positive way. Our goal will likely be to take on money probably in the next 12 months to facilitate further and more rapid growth.
So until you've brought on more money, what are your motions to try to bring in new clients at this stage? And is your product already market ready or are you still kind of in a beta phase?
Yeah, two great questions. Starting with customers, it's a really hard environment to acquire customers right now, in my opinion, because we're primarily selling to B2B SaaS and we're selling into what a lot of people would consider their go to market tech stack. So, we're at a point in time where B2B SaaS is, I don't want to say contracting, but they're much more conscious of spend. And they're trying to spend less on that tech stack. As a CRO, you're saying, I've got Salesforce or HubSpot for CRM. I've got Zoom Info. I've got Outreach or Slack or Clary, or the list goes on and on and on. So people are trying to consolidate and contract. I'm here saying, I've got a new idea about how you should forecast. Buy my stuff. So that's been really challenging. Thus, the importance of the near bound referrals. We are commercially available now, and we deploy in a couple of ways. Our partner RSM will deploy us as part of services they deploy. I have a partner called HLX, which is an integration firm, if you will, does a lot of work in Salesforce in the HubSpot world. They'll bring us in as part of a tech enabled service. When they stand up a customer, they'll use my product to do the pipeline diagnostics and my hope is, of course, is that those customers will convert to my customers over time. So yes, we're in market now, and I think we're at a spot where we can really start to ramp up our marketing efforts and hopefully scale and grow quickly.
So what does Outset look like today in terms of team size and your product focus and target market? So you mentioned B2B SaaS. Is there a specific vertical within B2B SaaS that you're targeting, or is it just all of the B2B SaaS territory?
Yeah, great question. We typically look for B2B SaaS software companies, although we can go to any company with a recurring revenue model, but B2B SaaS is one we know well, so we focus there. We usually say the company has to have at least $10 million a year in recurring revenue to be a great customer. It can be a bit smaller, but our platform, not to get too deep into the weeds, although we can certainly go there, relies in large part on regression analysis to make predictions. So there has to be a large enough data set for us to work with, and $10 million seems to be a good proxy. Although we have customers that are at two, three, or four, $5 million in revenue. When I think about size and scale the top end, I usually index towards customers that have under $250 million in revenue just for ease of support right now. If you're global and your RevOps the team is in Brazil or the UK, things get harder. But when we partner with RSM, they do have the resources to help with that. So we look within that range. We typically look at companies who want to grow, and in particular, companies who say, I'm not confident that I'm investing my sales and marketing dollars wisely. I need some help.
Yeah. And how large is your team right now?
About 10 people. We're pretty small. We do use some outsourced development, typically in Mexico. We also experiment with Costa Rica, but the core team is about 10.
So is your product typically self-serve or is it a more hands-on approach right now? And is the plan to become self-serve?
We'd like to be self-serve at some point. Right now, it's very easy to set up and configure for the most part. There are two things that are required right now that we hope to teach people how to do at some point. Number one is the data set analysis. When we get the first data to look at, we often find things that are odd or unique in the data. Whale transactions that weren't expected. My average deal size is 50K and I've got two $4 million deals. How do we want to treat those in terms of the predictive model?
Hmm.
Dimensionality. How do you want to look at your business in an efficient way? We usually recommend 3 or 4 dimensions, maybe a channel, a segment, a geography, a product, right? So these are conversational discussions. They're philosophical choices, if you will. They're not hard, but we like to be a guide in that process. Then after the initial data load, we often find more unique things. Hey, why do 10% of your deals create and close on the last day of the quarter? Oh, that's when we input our partner deals, right? So we'll find anomalies there. But once you get through that setup, the system runs pretty well by itself. It's pretty easy to use, and we're pretty proud of it.
So there's a lot of buzz around AI, and that's what the topic of conversation on most of these episodes.
Sure.
Is AI playing a role in your software, or is it more mathematical background? And what role do you see AI playing in the future?
Yeah, so I think I stole this from Google, but I can't be sure. I tend to bucket AI into two categories: deterministic and generative. Deterministic is machine learning and some of the unique bespoke and interpretable math that people use. So that was certainly our start. And we've even worked with a university to have some kind of unique calculations on thinking about things like close dates and some other things. So heavy into the deterministic side so far. We'll start moving into the generative model very, very soon. I want to give people the ability to ask Outset almost on a prompt type model or have Outset proactively suggest ideas. So right now, Outset will show you, for example, clearly a gap to goal that's looming in fourth quarter of this year. I was on a demo the other day looking at some data, and there's a customer that has a predicted 502K gap to goal in fourth quarter of this year. You can now begin to model sales and marketing investments to close that gap. Someday, I would like Outset to say, hey, Daren, I see a 500K gap. I've modeled 3 things for you: no additional investment spend, pure efficiency metrics, or these 3 campaigns that work best in the past. I wanted to proactively suggest those things or respond to chats. Hey, the board just gave me a K to spend the day. How can I use that to best impact fourth quarter of this year in this geography along this product line?
Do you see AI acting to close that gap between the self-serve and white glove onboarding, where the AI could be actually look at client past history and identify those whale transactions that stand out or the end of month activities that throw off some of the regression analysis?
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. AI sure could. We could interrogate the data. I have a model where we came up with suggestions right away or observations that can be discussed through. That's fantastic. I still think there's going to be a human in a loop kind of mode. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that your average deal size is 10K. I had this in a past life. I needed your first $1 million deal. For next year, how do you want that to run? Do you want that $1 million in the predictive model? Do you want to pull it out of the model and make it almost like its own program or campaign? Replicate that plus 2 more next year. So we're taking them outside of the predictive model, but we're still chasing those items. And we can have the AI actually make suggestions based on the flow and what we've seen across the last 3 years. Here's how we'd handle these 4 transactions. Would you like to model them as A or B in the model, or an adjustment to the model, or a standalone program?
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what are some common mistakes that you see in companies and how they model their revenue trajectories as you're starting to work with them and you're evaluating their past efforts?
Yeah, sure. Number one is the use of spreadsheets. And I like spreadsheets. I'm not an anti-spreadsheet person. But when you start thinking about trying to model and make predictions, if you have your cohorts in spreadsheets and you have somebody updating cohorts each week and month, If you have this giant network of spreadsheets and automations with Python or some kind of scripting language, you get to a mode where there's one person who knows how those things work. And a couple of problems happen there. Number one, data gets stale. If your assumptions in the model were based on an average sell price or an average deal cycle duration, those sorts of things, those might sit there for a year while you keep remodeling. If those assumptions aren't updated, your predictive model is not working properly. If the executive team gets together, and this is where Outset really shines, I think we've all been here. You go into an executive team meeting and you've got a marketing leader screaming, I need dollars for my campaigns. And you've got a sales leader screaming, I need capacity for my headcount. And you've got a finance leader asking, okay, who should get the money? When do the returns come? Right? If it's all trapped in spreadsheets behind one person, what's going to happen? He or she is going to go back or remodel, come back to the next meeting and give you thoughts. And then people are going to scream again. And ultimately, you're going to split the baby, or the loudest voice in the room gets the monies, when it should be an elegant UI that lets you model in real time in front of the entire leadership team and say, if we put this in, here's what should come out, and here's when it should come out. The when is such an important thing. If I'm trying to solve for fourth quarter now, I can do it efficiently. If I try to solve for fourth quarter at the end of the third quarter, really, really expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you seeing prospects or customers feeling increased pressure to forecast accurately due to the current market conditions and the way the economy is going right now?
Yes, I think people have been trying to forecast more accurately for a while now. And there's been some great tools. Look, I'm not going to knock these tools, but I'm going to say they're not the whole of the solution. You've got the Clarys and the Gongs and others who are forecasting very tightly based upon transactions, opportunity data that you can see. What's the seller have for the commit level? What's the amount? What's the close date? Can we see in conversational intelligence that the customer's saying the right things? Are the activities there? And they're scoring and help you predict. Those are all really cool tools. I bought them myself for sales teams. I want to be clear. But by their nature, they're looking at deals that are going to close this month, next month, or the month after. You're opportunity driven. That's not helping you at December right now. So yes, I see a lot of people investing there. I think they're missing something when they stop there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So back to your company, and let's talk a little bit more about where you see things going as a company in the next, say, 12 months. What is a big win that you are chasing for Outset in the next year?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So, the first thing we built was the predictive modeling, which works wonderfully and we're really excited about. The second thing we built was what we call manage to the plan. Manage to the plan to me is something that was always missing in sales and marketing spend management. Every single month, if you've ever sat in an ELT meeting or been part of a finance team, you know what it's like to close the month, right? We're going to reconcile our cash flows, P&L, financial statements, all that kind of fun stuff. And you do it, with a week of the end of the month, blah, 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 right? It's not fun, but we all do it. What's always been interesting to me is 40% of spend-ish is probably going to sales and marketing. And during that close process, we don't close down to the campaign or capacity level, right? And it's interesting to me because I'm spending 40 cents on the dollar there, but I'm not really challenging each campaign to see if I'm getting the result. So we built this thing into Outset called Manage the Plan. So at the end of each month, or you could do quarterly or weekly if you wanted to, I guess, you have the ability to take the plan, lock it down, snap it, and say that's where we were, that's where we finished, and then tweak the campaigns going forward. So you have this living memory of all adjustments of campaign performance and campaign spend and returns. And what we have the data for, we still have to put the UI around it right now, but I'm excited about this too, is we can start saying across these 12 campaigns, these 4 overperformed. Here's the pickup we gained in predicted bookings. These 8 underperformed. Here's the hole we dug and a win by month. So then I'm starting to say, okay, at monthly close, which is now financial and S&M, I can see all the gaps I've created 4, 5, 6, 7 months into the future, and I can start to solution them now. And again, model that optimal sales and marketing spend. So we just plumbed through the application to do all that kind of work in terms of snapping a line and holding a really good, clear view of what was month by month. And then just last month, we launched sales capacity planning. So now you can start to say, okay, how many sellers do I want to add? When should I add them? Where should I add them? What will their impacts be? So we're moving into this broader set of using real predictive analytics to predict the future, help you model how to change the future, up to and including sales capacity. So I'm really excited about those components right now. I am pumping the brakes a little bit on what I'm going to do next because I want more customer feedback. I've built what I always wanted as a CRO. Now I want a little more pull from our customer base before I make the next big decision.
So is that then your next priority for, say, the next 6 months, or I guess maybe only 3 months? The speed things have to change these days to really drill into that customer feedback and product feedback loop.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. There are things we could do really easily, like starting to surface more data metrics and variables. We could start to build beautiful visuals that you could bring into board decks, those sorts of things. We could triple down on the generative AI components that I already talked to that we want to be building in the background. But look, as a founder, one of the mistakes I made, and I paid for it a little bit, is I built too much product before getting customer feedback, right? It's a common mistake. It's one I swore I would not make. And then I made it. So,
Yeah.
so I'm consciously trying to pump the brakes a little bit and make sure I hear from the customers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a good pool of customers and users that you're able to tap into and get that quality feedback from?
Look, I'll say they're all good people. I won't say it's a good pool yet because I'd like to be bigger. I'd like to get to 100 customers give me feedback. We're not there yet. We're on the way. But if I had 100 customers and, 10% were screaming loudly and 20% were conversing nicely, I'd feel a lot better because the pool would be bigger. So I'll call it not good enough by my perspective, but I love my customers. They're all great people. I don't want to blur that.
So, what would you say a breakout year would look like for you? And how would that change the way you're able to invest your time as founder?
Boy, great question. I would love to see $1 million in net new bookings, and a business that was profitable or near profitable. I am really leaning into profitable, efficient growth, or PEG, if that's the acronym these days. I'm a fan of Adam Robinson, if you know who he is, big voice on LinkedIn, talking about being profitable first, try not to take VC. That's the way I really want to run the business. We have said VC is probably in our future. I think that's where we're going to head. But boy, if I could get there without it and fuel and sustain on our own, how fun would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. What have you found to be the hardest part of building your own business so far?
Yeah, wow. Boy, there are so many things that are hard. I think probably the biggest one for me is knowing when to drill ridiculously deep and when to try to stay at a higher level. I mentioned that I did some programming when I was a kid, but I haven't programmed since I was a kid. I'm more of a user. Um, so I'm talking to my dev team and trying to get really deep into the weeds about how things work. Every once in a while, I'll get, and by the way, my CTO, I've known him for 15, 20 years, awesome guy. He'll say, Daren, do you really want to go to this deep? You're probably not. I'm like, no, you're probably right. Let me take a step back. And I'm glad I have a team that keeps me honest like that because, it's not a control thing, but I'm a good manager if I don't know everything that's happening under the scenes. You get that kind of feeling, but I can't backseat drive a CTO who's writing code with a team. So that's been really hard for me to figure out.
That absolutely. So, as you're working on the business, where are you trying to dedicate your time? Because as a founder, you want to be involved in everything, but you don't have the hours in the day, right? So, where are you putting your primary focus right now?
Right now, I've really gone to the mantra that customer acquisition is everything. So I'm putting most of my time into customer acquisition motions. Like it's hard to get attention if you say I have a forecasting platform right now, because again, as we discussed, people are trying to cut a bit. People don't quickly understand what we do. It's funny. InfoWorld had an award that was available. I wrote 3,000 words. I submitted videos to them of demonstrations. When I had the time for videos and 1,000 words, InfoWorld got it, and they gave us an award in a fantastic category. We were put alongside BitSite and Gong, right? So, and by the way, we don't advertise for them. We haven't paid them a penny. So it's just we actually won this award. So I know when we use a lot of words and people get it, we do really, really well. For me, it's trying to figure out on a customer acquisition side, how do I get the messaging right such that a CEO, a CFO, or a CRO hears that and says, I get it. I want to learn more. And that's been really, really challenging.
Yeah. What kind of approaches have you taken to testing and refining your messaging?
Yeah, the first ones we took were really poor, I will say. LinkedIn don't come after me. We tried some LinkedIn automations, spam the world, come talk to me. Not great results.
Hmm.
We tried an AI-based SDR model, the same thing, spam the world, not great results. And what it came down to is messaging. It doesn't matter what volume you do it. If you can't say something that's meaningful and captures people's attention these days, you're not going to do well. So we've shifted towards much more of the near-bound motion, working with the partners that I already described. And we're doing a really bespoke messaging. I'm doing an experiment this week myself. No rocket science to it, but I'll go into Perplexity. I'll ask about what's happened on an account lately, try to get some cues. I'll look at the CEO and the CFO's LinkedIn profile. I will send them a personal note, and then I'll use a tool like Loom, and I'll actually record a 2 or 3 minute video describing, what we do and why we think it's important. And I'm trying that very bespoke. And I can't tell you that I've dialed it in yet. I'm still experimenting with trying to get the right thing. But what I did not want to do was go hire 20 SDRs and cold call the world and take out a bunch of money to build a really expensive model. I don't want to expand like that until I know I've got messaging that works. And to your point, feel like I have product market fit.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Having that hands-on approach to sales outreach definitely seems to be the way things are trending right now. Because I think of all the AI out there, it's harder to get in contact with someone when there's not that authentic feeling that it's a real person on the other end. What were your experiences with the AI SDR? Like how well did that go? What kind of approaches did you try?
We spun up multiple domains, we warmed up mailboxes, all those kinds of things. We got a high volume of messaging going out. What happened was, well, not a whole lot. We didn't get people to engage. We were just kind of shouting into the void. And I think it was very easy to detect that it wasn't sticking. It's pretty easy to feel like you're getting a generic message spamming you all the time. It happens to me on LinkedIn all the time with the LinkedIn automation. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
somebody sends me 6 messages over 8 days, and they all say nothing about except how cool they are, as opposed to what my problems might be, right?
Yeah.
So none of that worked for us. We need to keep trying it. I hear people say that there are great, AI tools now that create a bespoke custom message. But man, every time I get a message that I think somebody else thinks is custom, I'm like, this looks like the 5 others that I got last week. They're not that custom. And so I haven't cracked the code there. I'm always wide open to ideas and suggestions. I just haven't cracked the code there yet.
Yeah. No, it's a challenging space. It definitely is, and it's getting more and more crowded with all the AI tools out there for sure.
I think it's important for founders, if at all possible, though, to talk to third parties. It's easy to think you know it. "Hey, I've been doing this for
Mhm.
a long time. I'm going to set up a LinkedIn automation. I'm going to say this and go." And the next thing you know, you've just spammed a bunch of people and accomplished nothing. So Mark Benioff used to talk about it when I was at Salesforce.com a long time ago, not to me personally, but to the broader organization, about bringing some of the beginner's mind in. Now, they might be an absolute expert in their field, and they probably should be, but they're a beginner to your problem and your business. And finding those experts, bringing them in and having them challenge you, I find that really beneficial.
Yeah, it's no coincidence that you'll see so many successful entrepreneurs and founders talk about how the most important thing they did was surrounding themselves with what they would say is people smarter than I am, right? And it's not that they're smarter than you, it's that they have domain expertise in areas where you have blind spots or where you're not familiar, and they can bring a lot to the table in that area, right?
So true. And full disclosure, they probably are smarter than me.
So, final question.
Sure.
If you had a magic wand and could magically fix or change one thing in the business right now that's either holding you back or slowing you down from hitting your goals, what would that one thing be?
Wow, that list is so long. Every day, I tend to see problems and gaps more so than opportunities. Really, honestly, fixing customer acquisition. I had a boss one time, way back in the past, who said all good things come from revenue. If I could just find a way to get customers coming in more regularly and quickly, that would open so many doors for us. We can stand clients up quickly. I think the return on investment for our product is super high. I think we make our customers' go to market motions better. There's so much we bring to the table, and we do it differently. There's nobody I know that builds these predictive forecasts like we do in an application. If I could just get that customer acquisition component down, we'd be off to the races.
Absolutely. Well, Daren, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can our listeners go to learn more about Outset and to connect with you?
Sure, great. So on LinkedIn, I'm Daren Lauda. It's just one R in Daren. Our website is Ops.com. So Outset, like the word, ops.com. We're on X and some other places too, but LinkedIn and the website are probably the best.
Fantastic. To everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and as always, keep pitching, keep building, and keep scaling.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch, Build, Scale. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.